Chapter 33, Tanaka and Somerset. "Did you hear that?" asked Kaori. She had her hands up, palms out, as if to say, "Everyone stop where you are." Jen's eyes widened and her face paled. She took a step closer to her big sister, then another. "I heard it." "What? What? What happened?" said just Renee, looking from one girl to the other. "It sounded like—" Jen's eyes searched the woods, but she didn't move a muscle. "Someone's calling for help," Kaori said. Just Renee's eyebrows shot up. "You mean you heard someone screaming? Are you sure?" "Yes," the sisters replied, in unison. Kaori pointed westward. "Westward. It came from over there," she said. Without saying another word, the three of them walked in that direction. A dozen images flipped through Kaori's mind. She imagined Virgil curled up at the foot of a weeping willow, holding a broken leg. Virgil perched on the highest branch of the tallest tree, trapped like a cat. Although she knew better, he would never climb a tree that high, if at all. Virgil lying next to a rock with a bump on his head. She thought only of Virgil. She never imagined that after walking for 2 minutes they would have come across something else altogether. A strange boy she didn't recognize sitting on the ground with his back against a pine tree and a white t-shirt wrapped around his beefy arm. When he saw them, his face changed from frightened and whiny to frightened and irritated. His eyes went from Kaori to Jen, and then to just Renee. When he saw her, he turned stoic, and no longer seemed like the person who'd cried out. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. Clearly they knew each other. At least that's what Kaori's second sight told her at the moment. "Did you scream for help?" Renee asked, sounding bored. The boy huffed and turned away. He brought his arm closer to his chest. The three girls knew immediately that he had, even though he snorted out an unconvincing no. "What happened to your arm, then?" asked Jen, no longer ashen-faced. She motioned toward the makeshift bandage, which Kaori now realized was a pillowcase, not a shirt. "I was bitten by a snake, if you want to know." He sounded proud. "It was huge, like a cobra. It almost bit my arm off." "Really?" said Jen, mesmerized. "Yeah." His gaze swept all three of them. "I'm probably going to die if you don't get me to a hospital or something. I'm sure it was poisonous." Just Renee handed her back to Jen and knelt next to him. The leaf shifted under her knees. She held out her hands and motioned for him to show her the wound, like a mother dealing with a spoiled child. "What are you going to do?" The boy jerked his injured arm away. "Hex me or something?" Just Renee made a big show of rolling her eyes. "I know a lot about snake bites, so just show me your stupid arm." "No way." Just Renee dropped her hands and shrugged. "Okay, then, but you should know that if you keep that shirt or whatever wrapped around your arm like that, you'll probably have to get your arm cut off. You're not supposed to cover the wound that way." The boy snorted again. "You're crazy. You're always supposed to wrap up an injury. Everyone knows that. When you wrap up a snake bite, it makes the skin warm and traps the moisture. Moisture causes bacteria to grow, then your arm gets infected. Then it spreads, and—" She made a chopping motion against her arm. "That's why you're not supposed to wrap it up. Plus, I don't think it was poisonous anyway." "How do you know?" Jen asked. She seemed disappointed, like it was much more interesting to meet someone near death from a bite, rather than a stupid boy infecting his own arm. Kaori observed everything with interest. Just Renee knew a lot about nature and animals. Maybe they should go into business together. Kaori could tell the fortunes and provide spiritual guidance, and just Renee could help her with spells or something. If Kaori needed a specific type of stone, Renee would know exactly where to find it. They could come up with a good name for their business. But not Kaori and Renee. That sounded lame. Something good, grown up and businesslike. Their last names. Tanaka and... Kaori tapped Renee on the shoulder as the boy reluctantly lifted up his wrapped arm. Just Renee turned around to face her. "What's your last name?" Kaori asked. "Just curious." Just Renee paused, then said, "Somerset." Tanaka and Somerset. That sounded perfect, like a real business. She could see the sign now, bright and blazing. She could almost feel the flashing lights burning her eyes. Tanaka and Somerset, Tanaka and Somerset, Tanaka and Somerset. When Just Renee tossed the pillowcase aside to expose the snake bite, Jen stepped forward and crouched next to them. "That's it," she said. "That's the big snake bite." Kaori looked at the injury. She'd expected to see something much more heinous, too, like an enormous bump oozing pus and mucus. But the boy's arm was red, and that was it. They couldn't even see the fang marks. "That's hardly anything," said Jen. "Of course not," the boy snapped. "When it bit me, I snatched it so hard with my other hand that it didn't have time to do any more damage. I pried its fangs out of my arm, then I wrung its neck and tossed the body down that old well." Just Renee glanced up at Kaori, like, "Yeah, right." How do you know it's not poisonous? Jen asked just Renee, but Renee was looking at the boy's arm, not at Jen, so she didn't hear. Hey, the boy said, moving his arm to get Renee's attention. She raised her eyes. Kaori suspected lasers would shoot out of them if they could. The stupid kid asked you something. Jen yanked her jump rope off her shoulder like a whip, only it didn't look very threatening since it was hot pink, and she'd put happy face stickers on the handles. What did you call me? The boy ignored her and repeated Jen's question to Renee. He held his arm against his chest like it was a precious jewel. Because this is barely a bite. You may as well have been stung by a wasp. Just Renee counted off on her fingers. Your throat isn't closing up, you don't have a fever, you're not having a seizure, and you're sitting here talking to us like a usual dodo that you are. You probably got bitten by a water snake or a garter snake. Maybe a northern racer or something. Whatever, Defo, he scrambled up off the ground. How'd you manage to get bitten by a snake anyway? Kaori said, trying to make her tone as condescending as possible. I was on a snake hunt practically all day, he said. That's what I do. I hunt snakes and kill them with my bare hands. He showed her his hands. Is that supposed to be impressive? Kaori asked. Sounds like you're mentally defective. Just Renee stood too. You should go back to your cave and run warm water over that so-called injury, then wash it with mild soap. You don't want it to get infected, or... She made the chopping motion again. And for the record, my name is Valencia, not Defo. Jen and Kaori traded confused looks. My name is Valencia. I thought your name was Renee, said Jen, speaking for both of them, but Valencia had turned and was glaring at the snake bite victim as he walked away, so she didn't hear.